Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on an Amouage, one of my favorite houses. Well, used to be one of my favorite houses. Not a fan of the current direction of the house, as I've stated many times on my channel. So today we're going to talk about an Amouage that I do not have in my collection. Came out in 2020. And the only reason I'm getting to do this video and smell it and discuss it with you guys is thanks to the generosity of one of you out there, Allie. Very kindly sent me a bunch of Amouage samples, and one of them is called Amouage Ashore. So Ashore came out in, come on, there we go. So Ashore came out in 2020. I don't know why it's not focusing. It likes my face today. There we go. So Ashore came out in 2020. And this is one of those fragrances that I think it would be very easy for me to just kind of write off and say, you know what, I never want to smell this. The note listing is not my thing. I'm not going to like it. And this is kind of, for me, not that this is the greatest fragrance of all time or anything, but for me, this is a great example of why I think it's important for everyone to kind of smell as many fragrances as they can and make their own mind up on everything. It's important to give every fragrance a chance. It's almost like, you know, judging a book by its cover, in my opinion. Because if you look and see, and maybe you don't like the note listing, or maybe you don't like the marketing of the fragrance, you know, this comes in a white bottle. And for people that maybe don't like cleaner scents, or, you know, sometimes white bottles imply like summery scents or something like that, right? You may easily just write something like this off. And I think this is why it's important that you have to kind of trust your own nose and not rely on, let's say, what a friend says or what maybe like a respected YouTuber that you trust says. Don't rely on what I'm saying, right? Get your own samples and try things for yourself and make your own decision and mind up, because, you know, this is one that really would be easy for me to write off. It would be easy for me to say, nope, that's not my thing. I'm just going to take a complete pass on it. And like I said, I don't think this is the greatest fragrance of all time or anything like that. I don't even think it's full bottle worthy, but I do like it. I've enjoyed wearing it. Second time I've had a chance to wear it to bed tonight. And it's kind of one of these creamy floral fragrances, okay, is the way I would describe it. And creamy floral fragrance, you're probably like, oh God, I've smelled something like that 100 times. But the reality is that Amouage did this one with a little bit of a twist, okay? So it's a creamy floral with the twist. Now, this is done by a perfumer named Mackenzie Riley, so we'll come back to her later on. But Mackenzie Riley is kind of known for making creamy fragrances. It's kind of her signature, I think, from what I know about her. And so instantly, the thing that I like about this scent when you first spray is, yes, it is a creamy floral, but it's a creamy floral with a twist. And that twist is a little throwback to Amouage's heritage, okay? To Oman's heritage, if you will. And Amouage's heritage, in this case, is incense. And actually, there's a really beautiful frankincense absolute note that's in here. And the frankincense absolute really helps balance the creamy floral aspect, right? So for those of you who kind of rolled your eyes, oh God, a creamy floral, the frankincense absolute in here is actually very expertly done. It's properly done, okay? So there's a lot of fragrances lately that Amouage has been putting out that I feel they're nice fragrances. They smell nice, but I don't feel like they're an Amouage, if that makes sense. And this one, I really feel like it does meet that, yes, it is an Amouage, you know, sniff test to me, number one. So along with that traditional incense in the top, when you first spray this, you're going to get florals. You're going to get a lot of jasmine, and that's kind of the backbone of the scent is the jasmine. And you're also going to get this. You're also going to get this note of curcuma leaf. Okay. Now, curcuma leaf is kind of a fancy way of saying turmeric. Okay. So, you know, turmeric is. I think I've got some turmeric pills over there, but, you know, if you've ever actually smelled turmeric, the spice, it sort of has this slightly bitter, slightly pungent, and almost mustard-like smell and texture to it. It almost has like a curry texture to it, if you will. But it really smells slightly bitter and pungent. And that slightly I believe it's part of the ginger family. Don't quote me on that, but I think I read that somewhere along the way, that it's actually part of the ginger family. Okay, so if you know ginger in the top notes of a fragrance, they usually sort of add this zinginess to it, this tangy zing, right? And here, the curcuma leaf basically gives it a little bit of that gingery zing, but in a weird sort of spicy tilt, okay? So number one, instantly I like that the frankincense, even though frankincense absolute is listed in the base, I could sense the incense from the minute I sprayed this fragrance. Number one, positive. Number two is I really like the fact that, you know, they did something a little bit different in the top. So instead of just the usual bergamot, lemon, you know, that kind of thing, here they use this curcuma leaf note, which does give off slightly zesty elements because of its association to ginger, but it also adds that weird, bitter, pungent quality, you know, like I said, slightly mustard-like, curry-like, and it makes it a little bit different, a little bit unique, and I like that as well from the very beginning, okay? So a brilliant opening, even though it's not my thing. Creamy florals are not my thing. I have to give it to it. I like the opening of Ashore, all right? And so it adds a little bit of intrigue, if that makes sense. Like, there's this sort of intrigue to the fragrance. It's a unique flavored like concoction in the opening that you're just not used to smelling. Even if you smelled hundreds or thousands of fragrances, every now and then you'll kind of come across something like this that I think is very well done. Okay, now if you're somebody who is not into traditional fragrances, all right, so if you're someone who is looking for like modern Ambroxan bombs or very modern Middle Eastern fragrances, this may instantly put you off because it does have a little bit, you know, I reviewed a sort of slightly creamy floral fragrance called Opus 1 recently, and there's a little bit of a traditional vintage style to this type of floral accord. So I think you do have to have a little bit of a mature nose to appreciate something like this, but a brilliant opening nonetheless. And so right when you start thinking, okay, this boring, creamy, floral idea is played out, they kind of came up with something, I think, that freshens it up, it livens it up, but it still does it in a little bit of a vintage style, if that makes sense. So what else I like about the perfume, to me, is that this fragrance kind of transitions in an interesting way, all right? So it sort of loses a lot of that opening blast, and what ends up coming to the forefront is a slightly green, slightly camphorous like smell, like a green floral feel, and heavy perfume that really relies on like this sandalwood base, okay? So earlier I mentioned on that the frankincense absolute creeps its way to your nose almost from the first spray. The sandalwood does something very similar, all right? And the sandalwood comes across as having like this shimmery quality to it. And it really blends very interestingly with the florals. Now, in this fragrance, when we start talking about the marketing here in a little bit, you're going to notice that they try to link this idea of being at the beach and the sun beaming overhead in high noon, or they're going to try to link this idea of like a mirage, okay? The sandalwood here, Absolute, plays a very important role in Ashore, and basically what it does to me is it makes the fragrance feel completely, it holds its spot as a unisex fragrance is what it does, because without that sandalwood in the base, I really feel like the sandalwood and the frankincense Absolute keep it just hanging on to unisex, because otherwise this is a heavily traditionally feminine fragrance, okay? So that's the other thing about this release that you should know going in. If you are extremely sensitive to notes like Jasmine Sambac, in this case it's Jasmine Sambac Absolute, or En Rose Absolute, those two florals play a major part in this release. And they are beautiful, to be fair. I mean, it's a beautiful fragrance. This is kind of one of those floral fragrances that I would recommend to someone who normally does not like floral fragrances. And I think I said something very similar with Opus 1. It's funny because when I click on the similar fragrances on Parfumo, it lists Opus 8, which I have not gotten to in my reviews yet, but I will very soon. And so it actually lists a different opus than the one I was talking about earlier, Opus 1. But if you like that creamy floral type perfume, Opus 1 is one I recommended if you are wanting to maybe go with a floral scent that's a little different, off the beaten path than what you're used to smelling. And Ashore is another one that I could recommend, you know, if you want a floral fragrance for people who don't like floral fragrances. How about that? And so there is a very interesting note listed in the note breakdown called a solar note. Literally a solar note, like, you know, the symbol next to it on Parfumo is a sun, right? So I don't know how solar notes are created in perfumery, but the way it smells to me is almost, if you look at the thumbnail that I'm going to put up on this video, it almost looks like in that stock photo of the Ashore bottle that there's like a light shining off of the left side of it, reflecting off of the A and the M on the Amouage and the A and the S on the Ashore on the left side of the bottle, right? It almost looks like it's reflecting off of that white bottle. And that reflection of the light off of that white bottle is almost how the solar note plays in my mind, actually, when I smell the fragrance, because that's how it's interpreted by me when I'm smelling it. There's a very white feel to this fragrance, a very white smelling fragrance, very clean. Maybe that's the marketing of the bottle working on me. Maybe it's the Jasmine Sambac really playing a role with that white floral. But there really is something about the reflection of that creamy aspect of the floral that plays off of each other. It's very interesting. And so I will tell you that there are other perfumes that Mackenzie Riley has done. I haven't talked about any of them on the channel except for one. Some of the work that she's done that I have not talked about on the channel, she's done things like Meander, which I've smelled in passing and I thought it was nice, but I didn't think it was an Amouage. She did a fragrance from Mask Milano called Lost Alice, which I've never smelled. That came out a couple years ago. I think that's also a creamy fragrance. I think even Meander had creamy aspects to it. Mackenzie Riley's like the creamy girl. And she's done a few other scents I've never smelled, like Scents of Wood. She's done a couple for that brand I've never smelled. The one, actually two fragrances she made for the House of Zoologists. They're kind of flankers of each other. She made Macaque, all right? So she did the Fiji Apple edition and she did the Yuzu edition. She did both editions of Macaque for the House of Zoologists. And I was not a big fan of that fragrance. You can go check out my comparison video. I actually have a video where on one hand I wore the Fiji Apple, on the other hand I wore the Yuzu edition and did like a comparison between the two. And that fragrance I didn't think it was really worth it. But if you look at the marketing of Amouage, it's interesting because it basically shows a shoreline. Get it? Ashore? So it shows a shoreline, and it's like a minute video, and really it shows like crabs walking and the beach coming in and out on the shoreline. And you know, the big thing to take away from this is not an aquatic. So if you look at that intro video, you might think, man, this could be slightly aquatic. They talk about ambergris in here, and there is maybe a slight little bit of ambergris. It's tough because it just adds maybe a little bit of sparkle to the fragrance. It's not like an overly ambergris heavy perfume in my opinion, but it's definitely not an aquatic. So if you get a chance to watch the video on Ashore by Amouage, the one thing to take away is the sun, okay? Because I guess I could see maybe a little bit of the sand aspect, but the sun sort of reflecting on the beach, reflecting on the sand, that may give you an idea of kind of the solar note used here in the, you know, very clean white sand of the Omani beaches, that kind of thing. The only other takeaway in that video I will mention is that Mackenzie Riley is potentially one of the hottest perfumers out there right now. So for all of you channels that are kind of in a bind to create content and you don't know what to make, you could do a top 10 hottest perfumer videos and Mackenzie Riley could be in there. But other than that, you know, the intro video Amouage did doesn't really tell you that much. But there is a blurb on this fragrance. I'll read it off of the Amouage website. There's also a quote from Mackenzie Riley, which I think gives a pretty good indication of her thought process on creating the perfume. So this is what she says, quote, "Creating Ashore took me on a dreamlike journey through the olfactive landscape of Oman's eastern shores. I drifted off under the blinding sun on the coast of Ras Al Jins, intoxicated by the scent of Jasmine Sambac, piercing through the sky. As an extremely bright solar accord, I was enveloped by the sun's surreal luminosity beating down on the infinite white sand beaches and captured the salty mineral notes of ambergris. Okay, the other thing I should mention really quick, for those of you that don't know, for some reason, because of the way that the tides work, something like 25% or more than 25% of the world's ambergris naturally washes up onto the shores of Oman, from what I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something that I've heard. Oman naturally gets its pretty fair dose of ambergris that just naturally washes up onto its beaches. I know Ireland is another place where a lot of ambergris naturally washes up on. I mean, ambergris can technically wash up on any beach in the world, but I think because of the way that the currents work, there are certain places in the world where it's more likely to it's more likely to constantly be pushed onto the beaches of those countries. And Oman actually happens to be one of those places. Many people don't know that, but just because of where it's situated in the world and how the currents flow, something like 25% of the world's ambergris naturally washes up on shore on the white sand beaches of Oman. And so it says, capture the salty mineral notes of ambergris to evoke waves breaking on the shore. India is just a few miles away, and cardamom and turmeric recall the scent of spice the wind carries along with jasmine, a whisper to wake up. So that's what Mackenzie Riley says about creating Ashore. And the Amouage website says Ashore is the midsummer light in Ras Al Jins. In midsummer, the blinding light of pink pepper and cardamom contrasts with the dry heat of turmeric leaf, golden like the sands of an endless coastline. The Jasmine Sambac Absolute, with its brutally fruity inflections, I could see that. I mean, normally jasmine has more of a honey inflection instead of a fruity inflection, but honestly, I could see that here. Maybe the jasmine is slightly fruity in a strange way. Strengthens an imperious and disturbingly bright solar accord that a rose absolute infuses with its spicy heat. The vast blue seas crashes against the shore, and the scorching wind carries around the salty smell of ambergris and the sticky, smoky fragrance of olibanum hyper absolute. Crystallizing within it the smell of spices and sandalwood that burn on the other side of the sea. A hypnotizing floral solar perfume. Ashore depicts the mirage of the senses that occurs every summer on the coast of Ras Al Jins. So, that is the breakdown. A floral fragrance on the coast of Ras Al Jins, midsummer, when the sun is in the middle of the sky. Ashore depicts a mirage on the senses, is how they basically describe it. There is a little bit of a mirage-like feel to the woodiness of this fragrance. I could see it sort of shimmering as it blends into the floral aspect of it, but the Jasmine Sambac, I think, is definitely the star of the show here, hence the white bottle, hence the solar accord, hence all of that stuff, the fruitiness of the jasmine. And all in all, I mean, I would say that this is a solid release. I hear no one ever talk about it, ever. In fact, I didn't even know it existed. The only reason that Allie sent it to me is because she heard me once say, "What the hell is Ashore? I've never even heard of this." Apparently, it's part of the Renaissance collection, which I think had to do with maybe 3 or 4 other perfumes other than just Ashore. It was like in a set or something. But I don't know how that collection did. But I can tell you, I never hear anyone talk about Ashore. And this is actually a pretty good fragrance. If you're a floral, I'd rather wear this than Honor 43. I'll tell you that right now. I would much rather wear this than Honor 43. So, yeah, Ashore's, it's okay. Would I spend $360 for 100 mils? No, absolutely not. Would I spend $150 for 100 mils? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. I enjoy getting to know it. It's not my thing, but I think it's a solid release. And the Fishman needs to do more like this. You know, I think his earlier work was maybe a little bit better. Overture Woman and that's 2 solid releases in 2019 and now 2020. So Anyways, I don't know where the House of Amouage is going. I have no clue where he's taking them from here. I guess we'll find out soon enough together, although I have zero faith in the direction of the House of Amouage, but I've already made that perfectly clear. But I will continue to give everyone my honest opinion on all of these, as you know, if there's scents that I just don't have in my collection, in my arsenal to discuss, if a few drops lands in my lap, I'll be glad to do these videos for you guys. I love doing them. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. Love the feedback. Appreciate everyone watching. Cheers, guys, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.